Oh my goodness, is that a baby?
Are you saying hi to mommy?
Hi, baby.
It's the baby on the camera, huh? Can I have a kiss?
Mama.
Yeah. So it's been a minute since I've done a sit-down chatty video, so I thought it was time. I don't know, somewhere along the lines, I think I got afraid of talking to the internet, but I think some of you might be interested in a little bit of a life update, so I thought I would do that. I have a 5-year-old, Oliver. I have a 2-year-old, Isaiah, and or Isaiah will be 2 in July. So in the next few months, he'll be 2. They keep me on my toes. They're a handful. They're 2 very active boys. Oliver was my very easygoing, slept very well, super chill baby. Isaiah is a spitfire. He didn't sleep very well. He's got so much energy. He never sits still. Like, he won't sit still or watch a show for longer than 2.5 seconds. I can't even get him to watch like Octonauts, like any of those, Bubble Guppies, you name it. He will not sit down and watch it. So he keeps me very busy. With both my kids, I had like some postpartum blues for the first year after having both of them. Kind of hard to describe because I think overall my attitude was the same, I would say for the most part in public, but just I can feel inside I feel a little off, and I just kind of rolled with it a little bit better this second time because I remembered it with Oliver, and just kind of feeling like just really tired and exhausted and out of my league and overwhelmed, and just kind of all those feelings that a new mom feels. But then when you have 2, it's accommodating, the love that you have for your first baby, the love that you have for your second baby, which it's hard to describe. You love your children and you just want to show them both how much you love them, and you want to give them the time, but you also have to take care of yourself, and you also have to take care of your surroundings, and like all that was definitely a balance for sure. And we bought a house we actually got the keys to the house 2 weeks before I had Isaiah, which that's another story, and I'll get into that in a second when I talk more like home life stuff. But that's the boys. Oliver's gonna be in kindergarten. Isaiah's gonna do 2 days of preschool, so mom will have a little bit more free time. But in the day when they're up, I'm pretty much in full-time mom mode. And then during nap time, Isaiah takes 2 naps, and when Oliver's at school, I get like a little bit of a window of time to be creative, to film a video, to get some stuff done. I have friends that have 4, 5 kids, and I just am like, oh my goodness, you are my hero. Because I think 2 is my cutoff. Like between the 3 dogs, the chickens, the boys, the energy level is very high at all times. So speaking of the dogs, I see the neighbor dogs are just like walking by. I've got a lot of stuff planned for the summer. The boys are both gonna be doing swim lessons. I wanna put Oliver into karate, and we're gonna do more camping this summer, and yeah, it's fun. Busy, but fun. I never really talked about the process of buying this house and how we got here and how that all happened. So when we moved from the apartment, which I started filming videos when we lived in an apartment, we moved to a house that we rented for 2 years. And after we moved into that house, about 6 months after we moved into that house, we had been saving and we started looking for homes. So we looked for homes for a year and a half. I was never gonna complain about it online because I felt extremely blessed to be able to buy a home, but it was a grueling process to find a home. Lots of rejection. We searched within our price range, we got outbid, and all sorts of different things that kind of transpired. So the whole process was really exhausting, especially a year and a half of looking for a house. And we saw this house on Zillow. We called our realtor and we're like, we'd love to view that house. We came and viewed the house. We made an offer. That day the offer got accepted and we went into escrow. We ended up getting the house for less than we offered because we had some fluke with the appraisal where the appraisal came in under. So we ended up getting it for less than we offered, and it really just seemed like everything was falling into place for us to be here. But this house was by far the biggest house that we had made an offer on the entire year and a half of searching for houses. And we started looking a little farther and farther outside of the city, and so you can get a little bit more of a bang for your buck, but we never expected to have, 3 acres of land, 3,000 square foot house. Like, that was never what we were looking for. We would have been happy with a much smaller space. But it kind of worked out. We got this within our budget, and we're like, well, now we have land. What are we going to do with this land? And Byron, if you follow his channel, knowing his kind of history with food, he had been growing in our atrium in our rented home, and I think he looked at this as an opportunity to really grow food. And instead of like farm to table to farm, to start growing the food that he uses. And he has a really cool vision with what he's doing, which I will let him kind of share that on his channel as he progresses with what he's doing. Once he puts his mind to something, he's really focused. And for the last few years, he's been utilizing the land and really focusing on not only kind of landscaping, but growing as much as we possibly can here. And we've been expanding our herb garden because I really am passionate about focusing on like using the herbs that we grow for around the home. And that's kind of something that I've become passionate about as we've started to grow. I've loved growing like chamomile, and now we started growing calendula and some newer herbs. So it's just such a really lovely experience. It's definitely a learning experience. We've killed a lot of plants. We've learned along the way what works, what doesn't work. It's been a work in progress. We just want to make the best of it as long as we can, and hopefully stay here for many years to come and continue to grow on this property and really enjoy it. And I don't think I ever shared the story on this home and how we got this home. It is a beautiful space, and we feel really blessed to be able to have it. It is a lot of work. I will say more work than what I first initially understood. And I think when we did make an offer on this house, that was kind of the one thing we were thinking, like, what are we getting ourselves into? Like, it's within our price range, but like the upkeep of this is going to be a beast, and it has been a little bit of a beast for sure. But we want to make the best of this space and just make it a beautiful, awesome space for as long as we're here. It's been a really beautiful spot to raise our boys, really fun, kind of away from everything, but also close enough to be able to get to places if you want to. I started a business, Pacific Time. I talked about it a little bit on my channel, but I wanted to be careful not to shove it down your throat while still promoting it. It was a curated shop. We ran into a lot of roadblocks when it came to the shop. We wanted to do homemade products at first, but the insurance policy to sell homemade products was like outrageous. I mean, anything that we would try to do to kind of start a business, it seemed like we ran into every possible roadblock. And eventually we created a curated shop. It was really successful for the first like 8 months. And then I started to notice that it was a lot of work. I mean, a lot of businesses don't profit for the first several years, but we decided to temporarily close down the curation side of it and develop our own products within the brand. So that's something we're still kind of working on. Right now, the Pacific Time Instagram page is pretty much just what's going on our farm. And my husband and I now own Pacific Time, and we have some potential opportunities with it, but it's kind of, you know, I don't know, it's interesting because there's been a lot of reward with it, a lot of learning, but there's been some failure with the business as well. And I'll talk more about that in detail as we kind of go along with that. But we're still doing YouTube. We've been doing this full time, and it's not just YouTube, because I think a lot of people get confused on the business side of YouTube. Since we've been doing this for a while, we have a management team. They help the flow and keep work coming our way. And so we make a living as content creators, and we create content for different brands, for different platforms, and not just YouTube. So it might seem confusing because sometimes we don't post on YouTube, but we're still always content creating. 9 years ago when I started my YouTube channel, I was working in the skincare industry, which many of you know because I've shared that before. When I was younger, and I think a long time ago I've shared this before, like on Instagram and other places, but I did a little bit of acting and session work. So I was a session singer as a little kid. So they would call me for like little Disney projects, and I would come and sing the kid parts. Or for Nickelodeon, Angelica, the lady who did the voice of Angelica, she didn't really know how to sing or how to sing on pitch. So they had me come in and sing all her parts, and then she would match me, and I would get paid for stuff like that. So I was able to pay for my first car and pay for part of my college education, and that was like a cool opportunity. So I've always been really passionate about music and always felt like that was a part of my calling. You know, one of my first videos I ever put on YouTube was me singing Billionaire by Bruno Mars, and I couldn't really figure out, that was my first video I ever put on YouTube, and I wanted to share more music, but I couldn't figure out how to do it on a budget and do my own songs. And over the years, I just kind of started collecting studio gear and slowly created a home studio. And I've been learning to edit and trying to produce my own songs from my own home studio, so I don't have to leave, and I don't have to maybe pursue a music career in the traditional sense necessarily, but like while I'm home with my boys, when they go to sleep at night, if I have energy, which sometimes I don't. Sometimes they go to sleep and I'm wiped out and I'm like, I just want to watch a show. But sometimes I'll go back there, I have a vocal booth, I'll, write a song, I'll create it, and I've been putting it out on Spotify. And I want to be more intentional with what I'm doing so that I could start doing smaller shows on the weekends as the boys get a little bit bigger. And that's kind of my long-term goal, is to just kind of continue to do that in a way that makes sense for my life and my family while still honoring my passion. So like a little bit of YouTube, working on some Pacific time stuff on the side, and that's kind of growing and building, and really trying to focus on music and also just hone my skills and become a decent musician. I think I've always kind of looked at my dad and just admired the hours of hard work and dedication he put into it. And now he's on tour with Ringo, but he struggled for years and years. And my parents, people always used to think we had money, but we always struggled because my dad was a legitimate struggling musician who would be back in his music room practicing for hours and hours and hours. And I just looked up to that type of drive. And I think that's where that comes from still to this day. And so, I just try to focus on that when I can. The other side of it is the self-care side, which I pretty much was drawn to work in the beauty industry because at the time, Byron and I have been married 12 years. He was working as a chef, crazy, crazy hours. I went to go get a job because I was doing some session work at that time. Like, I remember when I worked at the beauty store, I was called to do a Britney Spears session, and I sang backgrounds on one of her bonus tracks for one of her albums, and it was a song called Selfish. And when I worked in skincare, that was kind of what introduced me to all the crazy gadgets and all the fun treatments and things like that, because I was around it. A lot of people will mention to me, like, you've evolved so much. Like, when you started your channel, it was all fashion and beauty. And at the time, that was kind of my job, I was living in the city. I was working at Sephora's and Nordstrom's, and all the girls who worked there were like dressed to the nines, cool tattoos, heels. It was the vibe, and that was my job. So I enjoyed that as well. And slowly but surely, my life kind of evolved into a more homesteady lifestyle. And I love it because I can still do what I love. I can still explore and be creative with my channel. I still love all those things. The core of me is still the same, but it's just a little bit different because my life has evolved and I've kind of evolved with it, which I think is definitely what happens from your 20s to your 30s. I think, it just kind of, your life goes and you kind of follow the river of life. It's like so cheesy. I've created kind of a pattern of what works for making content, so it is a little harder for me to sit down and film a face-to-camera video because of all these issues like lighting and this, that, and the other. I can film in segments with my other videos and then come back when my kids are asleep and do a voiceover. And it's just a little bit easier of a process, so I ended up creating this curated vibe, and then people seem to respond to that. Like, I think sometimes people don't want to hear me sit and blab for 15 minutes. So for the people who really enjoy that type of content, I just kind of pumped it out for a few years. And I mean, it's been a fun process, but I really appreciate you guys along the journey being there with me. And I just thought it was time for me to just kind of say hi and do a face-to-camera video, because it's been a minute since I've done one. You can check out what's happening with Pacific Time and kind of the updates on all that on my Pacific Time Instagram page. Of course, my personal garden, home life, you can kind of keep up to date on my personal Instagram page. My music has been going up on Spotify and iTunes, and just kind of what's going on with that, I usually share also on Instagram or Facebook. I know YouTube has kind of changed a little bit, and I try to kind of stay in my own lane and do the things that inspire me and make me feel creative and passionate, because I do love sharing and I love the platform and I love interacting with you guys, and I'm thankful for every single one of you that have watched my videos. And I'm not sure at what point you started following me or what keeps you engaged, but I appreciate you nonetheless, and I'm thankful that you're here. So anyway, I just wanted to say hi and thank you guys, and I guess I'll see you guys in the next video. I have new videos coming this week, so